The second moon marked the beginning of a revolutionary change. With the emergence of monsters and dungeons in modern society, and the ability users who fight against them, the world faces a shift in its paradigm. It heralds the advent of a new energy source and the decline of traditional occupations. Common sense thus becomes warped and imagination becomes reality. Chapter 1. Boy becomes a dungeon explorer. 1. My father was the direct heir of a clan known for its spearmanship. There were other ancient martial art clans scattered throughout Korea, but my father was strong even amongst the heirs. While growing up, I never once saw my father lose. Even so, my father would complain every day of his ill fortune, saying things I could not understand. TSK, what use is there being strong on the outside? With no chi, it's all looks and no substance. Ki. Shin has a ki. Haha, not ki but chi. It's the energy you build up inside the body. Of course, as I was only 8 years old, I didn't understand what my father meant by building energy inside the body. I was more interested by other things. Seeing my father smash boulders with his bare fists, or drilling a hole in a concrete wall with a wooden spear in less than 10 seconds, I thought I wanted to get strong just like him. You can do it too. Really? I can be as strong as you, Dad. Of course. You just have to train hard. Okay. I was at the age where I admired comic book superheroes. It was also why I fell for my father's sweet talk so easily. He had purposely left out the detail that it would take dozens of years of training. He forced me, his less than 10-year-old son, to scale mountains and even abandoned me in the forest. He said it was a necessary process to become a hero. Did I obediently do what he said? When I was only 8? Of course not. At first, I was bawling my eyes out. However, the only person who could cheer me up in this situation, my mother, was in Korea. I, on the other hand, was in the middle of the Amazon rainforest with my father. Without any way of communicating with the outside world, my cries for help went unheard. Uriah, shut up. There won't be dinner until you kill that snake. I hate you, Dad. You or. My first ever summer break, which happened when I was 8, seemed to last forever. It was the same for that year's winter break, the following summer break, and the following winter break. For 2 years, I learned the basics of martial arts. At 10, I was able to at least take up a cool stance. My body became large, unlike others my age, and my once tender arms had turned a little muscular. Although the boys my age said that I looked cool and followed me around, the girls distanced themselves from me, saying that the cute Shin had turned into a monster. Humph girls. Once they grew up, they would no doubt go crazy at the sight of muscles. Of course, back then, I was young too, and seeing my body keep changing, I whined to my father to bring my arms back. He beat me up. He had long since stopped treating me like a cute son. And so on my 10th birthday, my father finally brought it up. It was a story about a dungeon that would stay with me for the rest of my life. In the dungeon, there are lots of precious things. Mana stones, magical weapons. Heck, even orc skin would be treated as new material never before seen on Earth. Wow. So how do you go to the dungeon? My father laughed as he stroked my head. Through Dad's cell phone. Can I go too? Not yet, kiddo. You're not strong enough. Dad, what's a mana stone? Can I see it? That's. At my inquiry, my father's smooth talk came to a crashing halt. I should have noticed then that something was wrong. I'll show you that later. No, there's no reason to. You can enter the dungeon and bring one back yourself. Okay, I'll go to the dungeon. I want to see it for myself. My 10-year-old self was detached from modern technology. In this day and age where even elementary school kids had smartphones, I instead received a kid-sized wooden spear as my school entrance gift. There was no way I could have known what dungeons really were. Some kids my age were already playing dungeon, exploring fantasy games on their smartphones. Without knowing that dungeons were imaginary, I bragged to my friends that I would enter a dungeon when I grew up. When my friends understood the severity of my delusion, they showed me all kinds of novels and games to convince me that dungeons did not exist in the real world. Unfortunately, my 2 years of training had turned even my brain into muscle. In other words, I was slow to understand what people were saying. At school, I talked about become a dungeon explorer. What do you think happened? In what was dubbed Kong Shin's Dungeon Explorer incident, I lost my 2 of my best friends, Min-soo and Suchon. Kong Shin was my name, of course. Kong was my family name, and Shin was my given name. My father chose my name, saying that single-syllable name seemed strong. My mother had also agreed that it was a good name. Regardless of how others reacted, My grand ambition of becoming a dungeon explorer never disappeared. I trained harder and harder, having trained systematically under my father, who had already half transcended the limits of a human. When I became 15 years old, my father was the only person left on Earth who I was afraid of. Guns were scary, to be honest, but I was able to dodge a bullet with about a 50% chance. It was then that I realized that I had surpassed the realm of a human being. The next thing I knew, I had no one to call friends, and even my own beautiful younger sister was avoiding me. On my 15th birthday, I took my clothes off and stood in front of a mirror. Because I couldn't see my whole body if I stood too close, I had to stand far back. And it was a Hulk. No, this can't be. Well, maybe I was exaggerating a little. In any case, my body was far from normal. I was 2 meters tall, and was only in my 3rd year of middle school. My body looked like a gorilla's. It was all muscle and barely any fat. It was at the stage where my limbs were better described as deadly weapons. It was not something the human body could have normally. Something was definitely wrong. Not even my father looked like this. It's almost like an orc. Your handsome face takes after me, but your body. Dear husband, you must mean his face takes after me. His body is just like yours. My mother treated only my head as her son. Even though she was my true mother, I sometimes suspected her of being a protractor. How else could she be so sharp and ruthless in her measurements of me? Father, why did I become so big? I don't know. Maybe it's because you started training at a young age. When did you start your training? 16, I think. You crook. Hey, I only wanted to make you a dungeon explorer. On my 15th birthday, I beat my father in an official match. It was the moment where youth beat out experience. But even after taking a loss at the hands of my shoulder throw, my father said with bitterness, "So you didn't manage to obtain chi. There is no such thing as chi. The thing about dungeons is a lie too. A lie. You'll find out soon, son, so spare my back." On the same night that I carried out my sweet revenge, I received a message on the smartphone my mother bought me for winning against father. When I saw it, my eyes opened wide. Unlock by entering your password. Coup. I can't open it. Because my head was full of muscle, it was impossible for me to remember the basic password mother put in. The next day, I asked mother to unlock the phone. Lost for words, she got rid of the lock entirely. I don't understand why she didn't do so in the first place. I nodded my head as I accepted the phone. When I looked down, this was the message I received. You have been acknowledged by the self-proclaimed strongest on Earth, Kong Yang-ong, and have acquired the Dungeon Explorer's license. As of this moment, you have become one of the 5 Dungeon Explorers on Earth. Would you like to enter the dungeon now? Dungeon Explorer, it said. My eyes became wide in surprise as I realized the dream I had since I was 10 years old was coming true. Watching my surprised face, mother walked toward me, looked at the phone screen, and crossed her arms. This old man dares to mess with his son with Kotok? Today, he won't go unpunished. What's Kotok, Mom? It's the messenger you're looking at now. What's a messenger? I became embarrassed when she didn't reply, so I went to my younger sister to ask. She had just graduated elementary school, and was in her 1st year of middle school. When I knocked on her door, she ran towards it happily and opened it. After seeing my appearance, she let out a shriek and shrunk in fear. When I explained my situation, she kindly explained it to me with a shy smile. I looked scary on the outside, but she still cared for me deeply. After about 5 hours of explanation, I became a bit more used to modern technology. Yua, how do I reply to this? Oppa like this. What a cute angel. Seeing my sister trying to help even as she stuttered made me want to hug her. But because I didn't want to scare her again, I held myself back. After learning how to reply to the Kotok I received, I told her I would pay her back with a mana stone from the dungeon. Then, I typed yes into my phone. The next moment, I was inside the dungeon. An endless grey hallway, walls made out of stones and torches hanging on them. It was exactly like what father had described. Perhaps he wasn't lying after all. There was more. The moment I realized where I was, I heard someone's whisper in my ears. Kong Shin, Bronze Rank 9 Dungeon Explorer, has entered the dungeon. This is your first time. Beginner Dungeon Explorer support has sent you 5 lowest grade potions. Analyzing your abilities, complete. Beginner Dungeon Explorer support has sent you a sharp wooden spear. Confirming rank complete. You are 5th of the 5 Dungeon Explorers from Earth. You are 146,298th of the 146,298 total Dungeon Explorers. Rankings will be renewed at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. You have obtained a status. Would you like to confirm? Yes/no. Sorry for dragging it out so long. Everything was leading up to this moment. The moment where I became a true dungeon explorer. The Dungeon Explorer, titled Crown Prince of 5F. Chapter 2. Boy becomes a dungeon explorer. 2. I couldn't calm myself hearing all these alerts. The first thing I thought of was, yes, I'm finally a dungeon explorer. The next thing was, is bronze rank 9 high or low? The last was, what's a potion? Anything more was hard to put into my head. Ugh, I'm getting dizzy. Can you say that slower? Would you like to check your message log? What's a message log? It contains the messages Kong Shinnim received. Yes, show me. As soon as the words left my mouth, a translucent window appeared in front of my eyes. Startled, I took a step back. To think it could trick and appear before me, who has better senses than my father. But when I realized that it did not have a real form, I let my guard down and approached it. There, the voices I had been hearing were recorded. It was amazing. Sharp wooden spear? It is inside your inventory. Would you like to confirm? Confirm how? You just have to say the word inventory. Inventory? Yuwa. It was the same as before. A translucent window suddenly appeared before my eyes. The only difference was that this one did not have words on it, and that it was long in height and short in width. There were 10 fist-sized spaces next to each other. There was nothing above or below them, so it was 1 by 10. And on the first space was picture of a glass bottle filled with red liquid. The number 5 was written next to it. It seemed this was the potion the voice was talking about. In the second space was a wooden spear. When I reached toward it subconsciously, my hand went into the window. Yuwa. What was more surprising was that my hand didn't come out the other side. It really felt like my hand was inside the window. I wriggled my hand in surprise, but I stopped when I felt something touching my hand. It was thick and long. This was a spear. I instinctively grabbed onto it and pulled it out of the window. As expected, a sharp-looking wooden spear was in my hand. As I stared at it, a small window popped up in front of me. Sharp wooden spear, normal, durability, 70/70 attack, 10 equipment limit, none explanation. A wooden spear perfect for a beginner to use. It has no special abilities. I will be honest. I had no clue what this meant. For me who had never played a single game before, the terms beginner's weapon and basic weapons were foreign. In any case, I knew it was a weapon I could use. That was enough. I hung the wooden spear on my back and proceeded to check out this thing called potion. It said it would restore 100 HP, but I didn't know what that meant. Then, the voice told me to check my status. I didn't know whose voice this was, but I thought of it as a nice Nuna's, and just like she told me, I yelled out check status. Name, Kong Shin race, human sex, male class, none title, none rank, bronze 9 level, 1 HP 240/240 MP, 0 strength, 18 dexterity, 16 constitution, 17 intelligence, 5 magic, 0 charm, 7 luck, 10 skill, low rank martial arts, LV4, low rank spear technique, master, mid rank spear technique, LV3, strange. I see 2 zeros there. And if my strength is 18 but my intelligence is 5, is my strength high or is my intelligence low? What's HP and what's MP? HP represents your life. When you get attacked by monsters, your HP will decrease. When it reaches 0, you will be kicked out of the dungeon. In that case, you will not be able to re-enter the dungeon for 1 week. MP represents your mana. It is used to cast magic or skills. It is also called Chi. Chi. Your MP is 0. In other words, you have no Chi. How can I get it? Those from worlds other than Earth know methods to accumulate mana in their bodies. Also, those who already have mana can increase the amount of mana they have by clearing the dungeon floor and leveling up. Leveling up? It will be explained to you soon. In conclusion, there is currently no way for Kong Shinnim to obtain MP. What can I do to get it? You need to obtain a mana cultivation method. How can I obtain that? You can buy it at the floor shop located at the end of dungeon floors. Note, it can only be bought from floor shops above 10F, and they are very expensive. 10F. Since I'm on first floor, I just have to climb to 10th, right? That is right. How much does it cost? Is it more than 50,000 won? I was in my 3rd year of middle school, and with my monthly allowance being 10,000 won, 50,000 won was an enormous amount of money. As I was wondering, the voice answered me. You cannot buy floor shop items with the won currency. You may only trade gold, or monster remains dropped by the dungeon's monsters. Gold. Okay, there was hope. From what I understood, there were monsters in the dungeon, and they dropped gold when defeated. I could climb to a higher floor when I defeated all of them, and when I reached the end of the 10th floor, I could buy a mana cultivation method from something called the Floor Shop. Then, I could finally obtain chi. I could fulfill my father's dream as well. I was awed at my brain's ability to comprehend all this. Of course, my brain wasn't yet capable of thinking. If it was so easy, my father would have done it already. My intelligence was 5, and it was only a year later that I learned the average level 1 stat was 10. I even forgot why I wanted to become a dungeon explorer, and set my eyes on obtaining chi. I signaled Nuna that I wanted to begin exploring by asking her where monsters lived. Nuna kindly told me I could begin by shouting "Commence exploration." I shouted as soon as I heard it. Commence exploration. Then, all the windows that had been surrounding me disappeared in an instant, and an ominous aura began to surround me. A few of the torches were extinguished, and only the ones closest to me remained lit, burning strongly. Because I traveled the world with my father every break, darkness could not faze me. However, the prickling sensation I felt on my skin was concerning. Then, I felt a presence I did not feel before. I held my wooden spear and put up my guard. This presence was like that of the 10m long anaconda I fought at the Amazon. SSS. I could sense the anacondas crawling towards me from all sides, and I gulped. I knew I couldn't defeat an anaconda with my strength alone. Previously, Father and I had barely defeated it with me drawing its attention, and my father delivering blow after blow. But could I defeat several of them? Alone? I didn't want to be kicked out when I finally became a dungeon explorer. Thinking this, I tightly gripped my wooden spear. I saw them walk out of the darkness, and my eyes opened wide in surprise. You are 50 centimeters long and 30 centimeters wide. What seemed like puddings seemed to be diligently crawling towards me. To compare these things to anacondas, I felt sorry to the anacondas. I doubted whether these things were even alive. I stabbed my spear through one to check, and it easily pierced through. You obtained a slime piece. You obtained 1 gold. It exploded with a bang. I stood still, stupefied, but soon gave a shout of joy and jumped. Who? I'm a dungeon explorer now. The curtains had lifted for the legendary stage of the dungeon explorer Kong Shin. Or so I thought before I knew any better. It didn't take long until harsh reality set in. When I first felt it was when I reached the 3rd floor, past the 2nd floor when honeybees attacked. Compared to the 1st and 2nd floor, which were relatively easy, monsters called goblins appeared on the 3rd floor, giving me trouble. At first, I did not even know what happened as my HP reached 0, and I was chased out. I couldn't re-enter the dungeon for a week. The next week, I grit my teeth and entered the dungeon. Then, I finally figured out how I had died. Poisonous darts. The goblins had shot out poisonous darts, and I had been completely paralyzed. When monsters hit me, it usually hurt as much as when my father hit me. But because of the paralyzing poison, I couldn't feel any pain whatsoever. Not feeling pain was scarier than one might think. Because there were so many of them, it was hard to dodge every single poisonous dart. As a result, my HP reached 0 multiple times, and I couldn't enter the dungeon for a whole month. In the end, I asked my father for advice. Father, the goblins keep shooting poisonous darts at me. You're already at the 3rd floor? It hasn't even been 3 months yet. Am I fast? It took your father a whole year to reach the 2nd floor. It turned out my father had not yet awoken his 6th sense, and was unable to feel the slimes approaching. As a result, it had taken him a year to take the initiative. Since you couldn't enter the dungeon for a week once you were kicked out, it wasn't surprising it had taken so long. Even I made no progress for a month. So you're level 3 now? Yep. When you cleared the dungeon floor, your level increased by 1, and you were given 5 bonus stats. With it, you could raise your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, and others. Because I was unhappy with my intelligence being at 5, I put all my stats into intelligence when I reached level 2. Thanks to that, my intelligence had reached the level of an average person. Of course, even with my increased intelligence, because of the long years I lived out of touch with reality, I still believed I could easily reach the 10th floor. I tried to raise my magic stat when I reached level 3, but I couldn't put any points into a stat that was 0. In the end, I put 2 into strength, 2 into dexterity, and 1 into constitution. You must have made some money then. Money? I tilted my head. Money? I had gold, but no money. What relation was there between the dungeon's gold and money? What my father said next made my ears perk up.